Welcome to SIIMcast, a podcast brought to you by the Society for Imaging Informatics in Medicine. SIIM 22 represented an opportunity for us to reconvene as an organization in Florida, connecting with old friends and catching up with the latest in imaging informatics. Fortunately, part of the programming at SIIM 22 featured live recordings of SIIMcast from the Informatics Tech Expo. In this episode, hosts Prasanth, Mohannad, and Ali are joined by our guest chair, Dr. Tessa Cook, past chair, Dr. Marc Kohli, and Chief Executive Officer, Cheryl Kreider, to talk more about what it's like being back in person, duties of the chair and the SIIM board, the Informatics Tech Expo and innovative adaptations at SIIM 22, a growing array of global track options at the meeting, expanding content and partnerships beyond imaging for radiology to fields like dermatology and pathology, engaging more with the College of SIIM Fellows, and opportunities for in-depth education through the new partnership with SIIM Training. And finally, the vision for SIIM 2023 and beyond. So sit back, relax, and enjoy SIIMcast Live straight from SIIM 22.
Good morning, everybody. We're here in sunny Florida, and we're doing a special edition of SIIMcast Live. Today, we're honored to have Cheryl Kreider, CEO of SIIM, Dr. Marc Kohli, the current chair of SIIM, and Dr. Tessa Cook, the incoming chair of SIIM. Thank you so much for being here. We know it's a very busy meeting for you, but it's really nice to be here in person. We appreciate the fact that you gave us a slice of your time. I wanted to get started maybe by talking about leadership transition. Any insights you can give us, what that looked like behind the scene? Obviously, you're both amazing people, and I'm sure, you can tell us, Marc, maybe a little bit about your reflections of your time being chair of SIIM, and test any coming ideas you're at liberty to share at this point. I'm sure you've got secretive things too.
All right. So the first thing that I would mention is just to uncover how the SIIM board chair is structured. So it's a 4-year commitment when you sign on. It's actually a 6-year commitment, but it's 4 years on the board. And for the first year on the board, you are the incoming chair, as Tessa is now. There are always 2 chairs. There's always an acting chair and either an incoming chair or an outgoing chair. So right now, there is an acting chair, which is me, and an incoming chair, which is Tessa. And then starting July 1st, Tessa will become the acting chair and I will become the past chair. But I remain on the board. And I really like that structure because it ensures that we provide continuity of leadership on the board. And when I was the new acting chair, it was so helpful to have Jim Whitfield there as my support system. So many of you who know me know that I always have an opinion about something, and I am not shy about sharing those opinions. And so one of the hardest things for me, and one of the things that I'm going to be very intentional about in the leadership transition, is making sure that I am stepping back and really supporting Tessa and not doing anything to undermine her. So I'm really looking forward to that because I'm really excited to see where Tessa takes the society next as we go forward.
On it, as far as leadership transition, the transition, as Marc said, kind of has already begun in some ways. I have been part of executive committee conversations for the last year, learning the ropes, understanding sort of more of the behind the scenes operation of SIIM. And one of the really nice things about succeeding Marc in the role of chair is that we go way back. Marc was one of the first people I met when I walked into my first SIIM meeting. And so we have a great line of communication already, and that's going to be incredibly helpful as I take over the leadership of the society.
I promised you some tough questions before, so I have tough questions to both of you. And Cheryl, we'll have tough questions for you too later. So Marc, how are you going to pass the time when you're done with this? And Tessa, how in the world have you figured out to squeeze more hours in your day? Because honestly, comparing to you, I feel like a sloth.
So as far as passing the time, I've specifically not planned anything yet. I think that I'm looking forward to, it actually takes me a large amount of energy to actually step back. So I'm going to have to spend and invest a lot of the energy that I've invested in leading in stepping back. So I don't have any grand plans for the new bandwidth. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the future unfolds.
I was expecting some grad announcement like the Kohli Foundation or something.
Well, I guess since you mentioned that, part of my SIIM has always been looking for ways to diversify. And one of the ways that we want to diversify is we want to strengthen our philanthropy. And so asking people to lead a philanthropy committee is even more challenging than asking them for money. And so in my time as chair, I basically was like, I can't find anybody who is willing to lead the philanthropy committee. And so that's one of my new challenges that I'm excited about. So I'm going to be leading the philanthropy committee and looking for a great team to help us start to think about not only how are we going to extract money from people. That's kind of the secondary piece. The primary piece is what are the sorts of things that SIIM is going to do or can do that are special with those dollars, that are things that we don't really want to do with program revenue or things that might be attractive. So that is the piece that I'm going to continue with SIIM as I step down from being the acting chair.
That is really exciting. Tessa.
The other thing he's going to do with all his extra free time is answer my calls.
Yeah.
I give the same answer to this question every time I get it. You all know I am unapologetic and fairly vocal about being a working mom of now 2 children, one of whom is still quite small. And I can't do it without the support of my husband. So we're just going to figure out a way to find the extra time, just like we always do.
That's wonderful. Thank you both. Cheryl, what do you want to tell us about this meeting? I mean, I've loved every minute of it, and I know my co-hosts have too, but what is your impression?
I keep hearing the vibe is back and how people just love being together in person again. One vendor even said, yeah, the vibe at the opening night reception off the charts. Just so excited. So there is that piece of it. There's also the education that we keep hearing is just phenomenal. And to that, we give a shout out to Chris Rock and the program committee. And here in Informatics Tech Expo and Informatics Tech Day yesterday, which was the first, having the sessions here in the exhibit hall, I keep hearing great things.
Yeah. The radio's genius. So much easier to deal with. You're not trying to shout. I remember even with the plexiglass up, if you didn't get there early and get a seat, you're in the back, you can't hear anything like, this. And then hearing everything else. And this has been so much easier with these radios. It's brilliant.
I think it's actually less tiring as well. When you're out there talking to our vendor partners, you're not yelling, they're not yelling. We're not struggling when you're in a session here to hear what's going on. It was really a genius idea. Thank you to, I think it was Andrea who thought of it. So great job, Andrea.
I just want to add one thing to the radios piece. I'm going to start calling them reusable radios every time I call them radios because you can take the kid out of California, but you can't take California out of the kid. And a lot of people have been questioning whether this is something that is sustainable or whether it's something we should be doing. And the great thing is that the radios are actually reusable. And we don't expect you to bring it back to SIIM. We just want you to give it back to us as you leave. And then the company will actually rebrand them and allow us to use them again, or they'll use them for other conferences. So you're really borrowing this radio from us and we're going to get them back again.
Well, I was thinking even with you get a SIIM membership, here's your radio. And then if you need an extra, we have extras. So if you forget it when you're packing or whatever, right? You can get an extra one. That's fine. You give it back. It comes with your registration packet as a SIIM member. Then everyone's got one right off the bat.
We'll think about that. There's some logistics about
sure.
the number of channels and, things that are going to change from year to year.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to sort of address some of the things that we've heard about reuse and sustainability.
And I'll add from a very practical standpoint for this meeting, there's a box outside the exhibit hall where you can drop off your radio when you're done. If you forget and you happen to bring it to the closing session, there'll be a box at the closing session. And if you still forget, you can drop it off at the registration desk.
Hold on for a second. Prasanth, the last episode we just recorded, you promised me that with my membership, I'm going to get bobbleheads of the College of SIIM Fellows.
I made no promise.
I want that over the radio. I mean, I like the radio, but the bobbleheads.
We still got to make them.
I'm so hung up on that.
Yeah. We have other issues to deal with first. And besides, that committee no longer exists. It's not my problem anymore.
One is gone.
It's somebody else's now.
Well, that's funny because Prasanth, you promised me that we could keep the radios and it'd be like a bat signal, calling all informatics. And you said,
A big I, a letter I.
Mine's in the packing, it's in the suitcase. So that's not coming back.
I'm starting to realize Prasanth makes a lot of promises over here.
You know, you got to throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. How else are you going to keep moving forward with things, right?
In all seriousness, I mean, obviously the radio, as a first step is great. But, to what you said, Mark, in the future, this could be part of the app or something where people can actually tune in. And, people will probably like that because everybody's got their favorite pair of headphones or earbuds or what have you. But honestly, one thing I also wanted to say, because Cheryl, you spoke about the meeting and we all loved every minute of it. A lot of people don't realize Team SIIM is relatively small for what goes on in this conference. So honestly, kudos to you and your team. You're a very small, very nimble, but extremely determined team. And you really go the extra mile for all of this. I'm sure probably the biggest thing you and your team are looking forward to after SIIM is just some sleep, right? Though
100%. But I will say, to your point, yes, Mohannad, the staff, amazing. We might have bit off a bit too much this year as far as the increase in educational program with the in-person and virtual, but they just kept going, and we'll go back and reevaluate for next year. But to your point, yes, amazing staff. I'm very fortunate.
And I love this theme of inclusivity, of expanding content globally, but not just within radiology or informatics. I mean, we're seeing cardiology, we're seeing ophthalmology, dermatology, pathology, right? And one thing that we were talking about earlier was the beauty of being able to learn from each other, because we all apply informatics. And I'll say AI. We've said AI so many times today. I'm starting to feel like I'm wearing out the word.
You've hit your quota already. You can't say it anymore.
So now Mohannad's going to pinch me every time I say it.
Right. No, switch to IA, Informaticists Anonymous.
The radio is just going to buzz you every time you say it from now on.
And so, I think this is a great opportunity to learn from each other's experiences, the challenges that we face, although manifesting in different ways. And so on that note, what are the plans going forward for either continuing this overarching goal, including more specialties? Is there plans to just continue the same trajectory, or are we getting more fields involved in the future?
We are the Society for Imaging Informatics in Medicine, and imaging in medicine lives in many different specialties, in cardiology and radiology and ophthalmology and dermatology, in pathology and surgical subspecialties. And we want to see all of them here at the annual meeting, engaged in our society, learn from them, have them educate us, have them educate others outside of the society to help bring more imagers into SIIM. And so I remember a session at a meeting almost 10 years ago now, where we had a very late in the program session on imaging applications outside of radiology. And it was incredible. I mean, talking about using geosourcing for things and clinical informatics applications. And I looked around the room, and it was a very big hall that the session was in, and the room was probably 10% full. And the content in that session was just phenomenal. And so we want to have more sessions like that where the room is not full. And so I welcome our colleagues from imaging all across medicine to come and join the Society for Imaging Informatics in Medicine.
The other thing that I wanted to add to that is I think that you can see our commitment to being inclusive and to adding more specialties in the current new directors for the board. And I think that a lot of times we're so fortunate to have Veronica Rotenberg as a dermatologist who has been engaged enough in the society to be worthy and to have a seat on the board. And I think that her vision and her contributions are really going to be game changing for SIIM in the future. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how she continues to contribute to the society in the way that she has in the past several years.
And another area where we've been reaching out is through our Journal of Digital Imaging. David Averin, editor-in-chief, has set up associate editors for these other specialties that do imaging and bringing in those professionals to review those papers.
And of course, the diversity here doesn't stop at the different specialties. You've also been hard at work reaching out to other geographies. This annual meeting has had a lot of content from other parts of the world. Do you want to expand a little bit more about that?
Kudos to Chris Roth and the program committee for the SIIM Global experience. And they launched it last year while we were still a virtual meeting. And it has brought in-person attendance, but also virtual attendees to SIIM 22. And one of the things that the program committee and Dr. Roth feel very strongly about is growth and inclusion. And that, as you said, Mohannad, includes geography. And so I think we're going to try to continue to find creative ways to engage across the globe. Sort of tongue in cheek, Chris said he wanted to have an intergalactic meeting. I don't think we're quite there yet, but he and his group have really done such a phenomenal job with expanding our global reach and our global membership. And so we want to encourage informaticists from all around the world to come to SIIM, either virtually or in person.
I'll tweet Elon Musk after this for the intergalactic meeting. I'm sure he can help.
The other thing that I wanted to add to that is that our global reach, we're looking forward to extending that beyond the annual meeting. And I think that with the recently announced acquisition of OTEC and SIIM Training, OTEC has always had a very international footprint. And so we're looking forward to expanding SIIM through new training opportunities to help people who, may not even be imaging informaticists yet, but are interested in the field and want to learn more. That's a great place to go to, start out and to learn and figure out, is this something that's for me and where to start? So I think that even beyond the annual meeting, we're looking forward to attracting new folks through the SIIM training that we're working hard on.
Yeah, one thing we were talking about before is with all this extra content and with the time zones, this is like 12 plus hour day meeting for the traditional 3 days that we do. And at some point we might have to add another day, right? Just to pack it all in. But I know the flip side is we all have lives, fires are burning at home, I'm sure, PAX is on fire, in my home institution. When I get home, I have to get out a big fire extinguisher and try to figure out what's going on. But at some point, where do you guys want to draw the line at? Yeah, we want to do more, but we really don't have enough hours in the day unless Tessa can get Phil to help with that. I don't know. Is he willing to help with that? Find more time in the day for us?
I think he might be a little busy. But I will add, that's something that Chris and his group are really good at, is looking at the program, looking at the attendance, looking at, even with the virtual program now, we're not going to be able to look at statistics tomorrow or next week. Access to the online meeting content goes till August 10th. So we won't even know for a little while what the level of engagement is. But the nice thing is we're going to be able to figure out how we did this year compared to how we did last year and make adjustments and listen to the membership and understand what it is that they want in terms of engagement. 12 hours is a long meeting. Maybe the meeting gets longer, maybe it doesn't. SIIM was a 4-day meeting at some point when a lot of us started attending. So there's lots of possibilities, and I trust the program committee to make the right call.
So I heard a talk on interrupted workflows earlier today. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to interrupt this conversation and have a very clean transition to another topic, if that's okay. This is, the first meeting for SIIM in person since 2019. And for me, it's my first time. And so it's been a very different experience and I'm loving it. I haven't seen it in a non-hybrid setting. For me, SIIM is in person and virtual. And I'm excited to go back and catch some sessions that I was unable to see, or maybe the virtual content. But reflecting on the last few days, on feedback from members, on feedback from speakers, is a hybrid content something that we would like to explore more, or is there a shift that we'll see in the future?
I don't think we know the answer yet, quite honestly. As you said, to you, SIIM is always virtual and live. But for the rest of us, this is the first time SIIM has been virtual and live. And so I think we're really still learning and figuring it out. And we welcome that feedback from speakers, from attendees at the meeting, from attendees remotely to help us to make that decision.
And I would just add, from an association executive point of view, every association is having the same conversation. I feel like we're part of this large macro experiment. And to Tessa's point, we don't know the answer yet.
I think that the other thing that I wanted to add to that is that just one of the core values at SIIM is something that we call the bias towards action. And I think that you can see that here in this meeting, and that we're willing to try new things. We're willing to experiment. What I'm hearing from Tessa is that those experiments are things that increasingly we're going to use data to evaluate. And I think that you see that in our digital transformation strategy with our new member database and our new website that are going to be coming out over the next 18 months. And so I think that this is one of those things that we welcome that feedback, and we're going to use data to see what sorts of things to do going forward. It's a complex opportunity to figure out where's the right place to invest, what's the right place to structure.
And we're operating in sort of loosely defined or really undefined times, in that we don't know what is coming 6 months from now. 6 months ago, we didn't know how things would be now. And so that complicates it a little bit. But I wanted to add one thing to what Marc said was there's objective data, but there's also subjective data. And so I want to encourage everyone to complete your meeting evaluations, because we look at all of that. If something worked, we want to know. If something didn't work, we also want to know. And every program adapts to what we learned from the year before. But if you don't help us to learn, we can't adapt.
So you mentioned bias towards action. In that spirit, I'd like to propose a motion. When we have our first intergalactic meeting, can we please promote Dr. Rick Wiggins from Grand Poobah to Intergalactic Poobah, the one and the only?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Perfect. Motion
It's been said,
passed.
yeah.
It's
All those
done.
in favor?
We were talking about the bobbleheads before, but if instead we have different radios with pictures of the different SIIM fellows on them too. Yeah, so you make a collection of those instead of we'll do the bobbleheads, but now you can collect the different radios over the different years.
So it sounds like Prasanth wants to form a new committee called maybe the merchandising committee.
Oh God,
We can sell
merchandising. Just what I need, another committee.
The SIIM Swag Committee.
Oh God. First
This is
podcast
dangerous
and parties to swag.
Should we make a motion to nominate him as chair?
Sure.
If we
Do
go
I
any
have a
further-
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Awesome.
I think you're stuck now.
Well, hey, you guys reprinted the t-shirts that my wife designed from a couple years back. So I guess that's precedent already. Great. Now I've got another thing to do.
Now, in all seriousness, I actually did have one point to expand there. So, Marc, I do want to have you speak about the strategic plan when you have a moment. But there's actually one thing I wanted to propose, since I have all three of you here, that has been on my mind for a very long time. So we've been doing this global expansion. And I remember when I first got involved with SIIM, we used to have regional meetings. And I would really like to propose if we can bring something like that back, or even like SIIM global chapter, so to speak. I'm based in Canada, and we have a very sizable informatics community that would love to be able to get together on a mini scale, because traveling to the States is not always accessible. And I've spoken to people from other parts of the world. Yesterday I was speaking to Felipe from Brazil, and they also have a sizable informatics community. And again, not easy for them to travel. I spoke to somebody else from India, and the same story. So not to put you on the spot, but just planting the seed. As
We also have Alok, who's a member of our crew. He's in UAE. For him, it's going to be difficult to come back sometimes, and he's got a big PAX upgrade that he's got to deal with, et cetera. But he's talked about, what if we had a regional kind of thing and people could come together and do something similar?
Yeah. And as far as that goes, you're going to have no shortage of volunteers who are more than happy to roll up their sleeves and get these chapters running and, help with planning meetings and whatnot. But anyway, as far as plans go, Marc, you want to tell us a bit more about the strategic plan?
Sure. So thank you for that, Mohannad. The strategic plan, looking forward to getting that out on the webpage so that you can see it. A lot of strategic plans spend a lot of time and effort investigating the mission and the vision and retooling those. We actually didn't feel like that was a really great use of people's time, because we felt like the mission and vision were still fresh and relevant. And so we went through a pretty data-driven process that was empowered by some consultants. We did a lot of data collection from both current members, past members, non-members, pretty sizable email survey. And what we settled on was a pretty high-level strategic plan that has 4 pillars and then 2 foundational strategies. So the pillars are research, education, technical harmonization, and then our culture of belonging. which is where our diversity, equity, and inclusion pieces live. And then our one foundational strategy is maintaining the strong community that we have. And then the final foundational strategy is to make sure that we're growing in a sustainable fashion. So there's some, business responsibility and growth pieces that are there at the foundation. The other thing that we did then at our last strategic retreat, strategic planning is hard with folks at SIIM because everybody is such a doer and everybody wants to jump in and talk about their particular solution and their particular tactics. So part of my job was to keep pulling people up out of the weeds constantly. But in the strategic retreat that we just had back in March, what we did was we had the committee chairs and some of the subcommittee chairs actually talk about some of the tactics that they wanted to execute within that strategic plan. And then we went through a process of looking at those tactics and sort of assessing, how much resources might be needed and also how much interest there was from the board. So we've gone through this process that I think was really good to socialize, like what are all the sorts of things we want to do, and then trying to go through a prioritization and a resource allocation exercise to figure out what we're going to do next. But all of what we're going to do next is really up to the board and up to Tessa.
And as Marc said, it's an ongoing process. I'm fortunate enough to have inherited a phenomenal strategic plan and am humbled to have the opportunity to guide our committees as they execute that plan. And so, there's a lot going on at SIIM. We've been growing really phenomenally over the last few years, and we're going to look at the tactics and the initiatives that align with our strategic plan over the next couple of years. And that's where we're going to be focusing.
I think more specifically to your regional meeting question and your regional SIIM question, I would just say that I think that that's a fantastic idea. We've done some of that in the past. And in the past, we've had some limited success with it. So I think that SIIM now recognizes that sometimes you can have a great idea, but it's not the right time. And it might not, even though it's a great idea, it may only see limited success because it wasn't the right time. I hope that the board is open to re-investigating that. However, I will say that that wasn't one of the tactics that we identified for our current strategic plan. So I think that that's something good to continue the conversation on, but not something that we'll probably see in the next year or two, but maybe something that we start to see after that, depending on where the board and where our committees want to go. Because I do think it is a good idea.
I want to put forth a motion that Mohannad is going to be the chair of the new committee for regional SIIM meetings. Do I get a second? Ali seconds.
Is there time for discussion?
There's always time for discussion.
Do we get more staff to help execute
Of
these?
course.
Okay.
I'd be more than happy to assist any way I can. And that goes from, helping with the committee, supplying maple syrup candy to everybody involved. We're going to make this very, very Canadian. I didn't expect there to be a flip of a switch. Obviously, it's a process, takes a little bit of planning, and it's not something you want to jump into. I figured I planted the seed, and hopefully we will see the results, whenever the timing is right. And there are so many things in motion. There's only so much you can do. Again, the board, some staff, everybody's doing a phenomenal job. Everybody's working at 110%, maybe even more. Well, Tessa's always 250%? But yes, when there's room for action on that, please, count me in 100%.
Yeah. And the other thing we should also think about is Ali, he is a member in training. There are a lot of members in training that also want to get involved in this, amongst other initiatives, are a great way for them to get involved in their passion about let's connect with other countries. Let's connect with the other societies that also do imaging, things like that. So our fellowship, we will get people that will, for musculoskeletal, we'll have people that started in orthopedics. They did a year or two of orthopedics, then came to radiology. So they have a lot of connections into orthopedics. There are a lot of scope imaging, right? So again, they're taking images. It's a great way to make those connections through into other non-radiological societies, right?
Mohannad may also need an assistant to the regional meeting manager.
And so just to come back to the strategic plan real quick, one question I had was, first of all, congratulations to all of our College of SIIM fellows. It's fantastic to see that recognition and inspiring for all of us. And my question is, how do you see them stepping into this new role? Or is there a new role? Or do they continue the magnificent work they're already doing? And that this is just another step in that journey?
As one of the SIIM fellows, we actually had this conversation this morning and specifically talked about a variety of potential ways that we can engage with the society. One of the things, Ali, that came up at the Smiths roundtable discussion yesterday was that, our members in training want to hear the stories of our career paths. And I think that would be a really amazing contribution from the SIIM fellows because everybody's had a different trajectory. I mean, we heard from Dr. Wiggins in the opening session, it's as nonlinear as it could possibly be. Everybody's journey is a little bit unique and there is no right way to become an imaging informaticist. There's just your way to become an imaging informaticist. And so that was one of the ideas that we floated this morning is we'd love a way to sort of encapsulate that for members in training, for current members, for folks who are new to imaging informatics, because you may not necessarily just have finished your professional training. You might have made a career change, but you're still new to this field and could benefit so much from hearing the stories of others who got here.
Well, that looks like about 2 years worth of podcasts for us. That's enough content for a couple of years at least.
I think I might need to make another motion, but I think you also just volunteered, so it won't.
Well, we're already doing this. Like we get people, we have, Dr. Wiggins has been on, Dr. Riker, all these, I'm going to have Steve Horry on to talk about different things. But many of the times it's to talk about not their journey per se, but other things, maybe the historical aspects, how they've seen things. Or, Dr. Wiggins, he's big into education. So he was talking about education and how education has changed and how he sees education moving into the future. Here we heard more about his story. So we may just need to alter our focus a little bit to all right, let's hear, how did you get into this? What were the, challenges? How did you overcome them? How did you handle setbacks? Things like that.
Or if you wanted 4 years of additional content, you could just make 2 sets of podcasts with every fellow.
Yes. There's always more and more in addition to all the other stuff we need to cover as part of a good season of SIIMcast.
I want to circle back to something we covered super quickly. So Cheryl, you touched on SIIM training. And for anybody that's not been plugged in and aware of what's going on, you want to give maybe a quick, brief introduction, what SIIM training is, what's available, so just people know what services are available from SIIM?
It's my pleasure. So SIIM training is a compilation of courses that are online and live in person. We can do custom training for institutions, corporations that might want it, but it's in DICOM, HL7, FIRE. The courses go more in depth into the subject matter, and we're just seeing a lot of interest in these courses and the study guides, the ebooks that can be purchased online as well. And the virtual hospital is a big piece of this. And Mohannad, you're helping us get it up and running. But yeah, we're just very excited about, to Marc's point, this global outreach and the training courses. Grateful to Herman and working with us through this transition and helping Corey get the courses then rebranded to SIIM. So we're still in a bit of transition, but it's headed in the right direction.
I think that one of the things that I'm excited about SIIM training is that as a person on the board, we go and visit with folks who are our industry partners and talk to them about, solicit any feedback that they have about the annual meeting. And one of the things that I tell them about is that SIIM training is a great opportunity for the companies who are onboarding new employees. So in addition to those in-depth resources, our field is very technical, but this is a way to bootstrap some of that technical learning opportunity and be able to outsource that to high quality content. So I'm excited because I think that the SIIM training really offers something for all of the personas that are part of imaging informatics and all of the imaging informaticists.
We're almost out of time. And so I have to ask this question. Looking forward and hoping to get more of our members in training involved, what are some thoughts on reaching out, inspiring, and really bringing together this group of trainees who will hopefully one day be our leaders in informatics? What are some thoughts on increasing that engagement on that front?
I don't know if you know this story, Ali, but I came to my first SIIM because there was a time when SIIM had an essay contest. And one of my mentors, whose name will be recognizable to everybody, Woojin Kim, looked over across the reading room one day and he said, "Hey, I hear you know how to code." And I wasn't sure how to answer that question because what follows that, right? But anyway, his point was, there's this society called SIIM and your interests seem to align. And hey, by the way, there's an essay contest and the deadline is next week. You should apply. And so I did. And here we are 13 years later. So, I think we're going to be brainstorming really creative ways to engage our members in training. I mean, I have to credit you, Ali, the work you've done at this annual meeting to get people connected, to have the summary of the sessions, your daily bulletins has been phenomenal. And I hope that we've reached both members in training who are attending virtually. I know the core exam was this week, so it was kind of an odd year for scheduling. But more and more, we're looking at creative ways to engage members in training even before they actually get to the annual meeting, because there's certainly content and opportunities here to network with each other, to network with experts, to network with the SIIM fellows, with our vendor partners, with all of the personas that SIIM represents. But we want to be able to reach out even before you get here. And so there's going to be some conversations around that in the future.
My answer would be a little bit more meta, I think. And I've been sitting here thinking about how and why SIIM seems to do a really good job at something that many other specialty societies, departments struggle with. And that is really embracing and promoting the people who are the future. I don't know whether that's because we are self-selected for people who are very systems oriented and understand the value of things like redundancy, things like sustainability, and things like transitions. I don't know why, but personally, I think that once you get in the door here, you end up getting subsumed into this vortex of engagement that really your opportunity is only limited by your willingness to contribute and your willingness to engage. So I think that SIIM is going to continue to draw in new members in training based on creating that magic and perpetuating the magic of, bringing people here and then engaging.
And thank you very much for your time. We are unfortunately at the end of our session. I'll leave this final thought. Being back, and for me being here the first time, but for most of us being back here in person, the excitement, the energy, it's as if we're here in the sun, right? And we're each going to leave with a little bit of that light back to our institutions and hopefully let that grow over the course of the next year. So thank you again for your inspiration, for your leadership, and for your time. Appreciate it.
SIIMcast has been brought to you by the Society of Imaging Informatics in Medicine. Please visit our website at SIIM.org for more information and educational content, including webinars and an archive of prior episodes. Please follow us on Twitter at SIIM_tweets. Thank you to our listeners for your continued support.